"You don't belong in this line, sir. Economy boarding is in Zone 5. The gate agent's voice cut through the noise of the terminal like a knife. Loud, condescending, and final. She didn't even look at his ticket. She just looked at him. Marcus stood frozen, his hand tightening around the handle of his carry-on. "Excuse me?" he asked calmly, though his heart began to pound. "I said, step aside," she snapped, signaling security with a flick of her wrist. "We have a strict dress code for first class, and you look suspicious." She thought she was just kicking a thug off her flight. She had no idea she was about to cost her airline $40 billion in less than an hour. She had just blocked Marcus Thorne, and he wasn't just a passenger. He was the man who owned the sky. The fluorescent lights of JFK International Airport hummed with the manic energy of a Tuesday evening. Travelers rushed past in a blur of wheeled suitcases and neck pillows, checking watches and frantically searching for gate numbers. But amidst the chaos, Marcus Thorne moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm. He was a tall man, 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his casual charcoal hoodie. He wore faded jeans and a pair of nondescript sneakers that had seen better days. To the untrained eye, he looked like a tired graduate student, or perhaps a weary musician returning from a gig. There was no Rolex on his wrist, no Italian leather briefcase in his hand. Marcus hated the trappings of wealth. He found them distracting. At 38 years old, Marcus was the founder and CEO of Thorne Dynamics, a global logistics and AI infrastructure firm that quietly ran the backend systems for half the Fortune 500. He didn't just have money. He had power, the kind of power that could reroute global shipping lanes with a phone call or crash a server farm in Tokyo with a single line of code. But today, he wasn't a CEO. He was just a son trying to get home to London to see his mother, who had been hospitalized that morning with a suspected stroke. His private jet, a Gulfstream G650, was grounded in Teterboro due to a mechanical failure with the hydraulic seals. It was a rare inconvenience, but Marcus didn't have time to wait for the repairs. He had booked the last seat on Global Zenith Airlines flight 882 to Heathrow, a first-class ticket that had cost him $14,000, a sum he hadn't even blinked at paying. He adjusted his backpack, feeling the vibration of his phone in his pocket. It was his assistant, Sarah. "Marcus, are you at the gate?" Sarah's voice was tight with worry. "Just getting there now," Marcus replied, his voice deep and steady, betraying none of the anxiety gnawing at his gut. "How is she?" "Stable, but the doctors are waiting for you before they make any decisions on the surgery. You need to be there by morning." "I'll be there," Marcus promised. "I'm boarding in 10 minutes. I'll call you from the air." He hung up and approached gate 42. The boarding area was crowded. A long line of weary travelers snaked back from the economy lane, while the priority access lane stood empty, roped off by velvet stanchions. A sign gleamed in gold letters, "Global Zenith First in Business Class," the pinnacle of travel. Behind the podium stood 2 agents. One was a young man typing furiously on a computer, looking overwhelmed. The other was a woman in her late 40s, her uniform perfectly pressed, her blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of rigidity. Her name tag read Patricia, senior lead. She was scanning the crowd with eyes that looked like they were searching for a reason to be annoyed. Marcus took a deep breath. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept in 24 hours, having come straight from a grueling negotiation in Silicon Valley. He just wanted to get on the plane, drink a glass of whiskey, and close his eyes until London. He stepped into the empty priority lane, clutching his digital boarding pass. He didn't notice the way Patricia's eyes snapped toward him. He didn't notice the slight curl of her lip. He was thinking about his mother. He reached the podium and held out his phone. "Good evening," he said politely. Patricia didn't look at the phone. She looked at his hoodie, then his sneakers, then his face. She didn't smile. She didn't offer the standard corporate greeting. "Zone 5 is that way," she said, pointing a manicured finger toward the mass of people in the economy line. She didn't even make eye contact. She immediately turned back to her screen. Marcus blinked, confused. "I'm sorry?" "Economy," she repeated. louder this time, as if speaking to a child or someone who didn't understand English. General boarding hasn't started yet. You need to wait with the others. Marcus looked at the sign next to him. Priority boarding open. I'm not in economy, Marcus said, his voice remaining calm. I'm in first class, seat 1A. The young agent next to her looked up, about to reach for Marcus's phone to scan it, but Patricia slapped her hand down on the counter, stopping him. She turned slowly to face Marcus, her expression shifting from dismissal to active hostility. Sir, she said, the word dripping with venomous sarcasm. First class is for our premium verified guests. It is not for standby upgrades or staff travelers. Please remove yourself from the lane so you don't block the actual paying customers. Marcus looked around. The lane behind him was empty. He was blocking no one. I am a paying customer, Marcus said, the steel entering his voice. Scan the code. I don't need to scan it to know it's fake, Patricia scoffed. We've had a lot of problems lately with people doctoring screenshots to sneak into the lounge or upgrade seats. You fit the profile. The air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. The profile? Marcus asked softly. And what profile is that, Patricia? The terminal was loud, but around the podium, silence began to spread like a contagion. People in the front of the economy line stopped checking their phones and started watching. A businessman in a suit behind Marcus, who had just arrived in the priority lane, cleared his throat awkwardly but said nothing. Patricia straightened up, crossing her arms over her chest. She seemed to draw energy from the audience. This was her gate, her domain. She had worked for Global Zenith for 20 years, and she prided herself on being the gatekeeper, literally. She viewed herself as the first line of defense against the riffraff. Look, she said, her voice raising an octave so the onlookers could hear. I don't have time for games. You're wearing a hoodie that looks like you slept in it. You have no luggage tags. You're traveling alone one way to London on a ticket purchased 3 hours ago. In my experience, that screams fraud or drug mule. You look suspicious, sir, and under FAA regulations, I have the right to deny boarding to anyone I deem a security risk. The young agent next to her looked terrified. Patty, maybe we should just scan. Quiet, David, she snapped. She turned back to Marcus, a smug smile playing on her lips. I'm doing you a favor by not calling the police right now for attempting to defraud an airline. Now, go to the back of the line, wait for Zone 5, and if there's a seat left in economy after we clear the standbys, maybe, I'll let you on. Marcus stared at her. It was almost impressive, the sheer density of her prejudice. She hadn't checked his ID. She hadn't looked at his passport. She saw a black man in a hoodie and decided he was a criminal. You are making a mistake, Marcus said. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He spoke with the quiet confidence of a man who managed a portfolio larger than the GDP of some small countries. I am asking you one last time to scan my boarding pass and let me board this plane. My mother is sick. I need to get to London. Oh, the sick mother story. Patricia laughed, shaking her head. She looked at the businessman behind Marcus. Can you believe this guy? They always have a sick mother or a dying dog. The businessman looked uncomfortable. I just want to board, miss. Patricia turned back to Marcus, her face hardening. You are disrupting the boarding process. I am counting to 3. If you are not out of this lane, I am calling airport security and having you removed from the terminal. You will be placed on the no-fly list. Do you understand me? Marcus didn't move. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and opened the camera app. He didn't point it at her face. He pointed it at her name tag, then panned up to the first class sign, and finally turned it to himself. My name is Marcus Thorne, he said to the camera, his voice calm. I am at JFK Gate 42. I hold a valid first-class ticket for Global Zenith Flight 882. I am being denied boarding by Senior Agent Patricia because she says I look suspicious and fit the profile of a fraudster. Patricia's eyes went wide. The camera changed everything. It stripped away her authority and replaced it with accountability, and she hated it. Put that phone away, she shrieked, lunging over the podium to grab it. Marcus stepped back smoothly, keeping the phone out of her reach. "That is assault," Marcus said simply. "Don't do it again." Patricia's face turned a mottled red. She slammed her hand down on the landline phone at the desk. "Security! This is Gate 42. I have a hostile passenger. He is aggressive. He is filming me, and he is refusing to comply with federal safety orders. Send backup immediately. He's dangerous." She hung up and pointed a trembling finger at him. "You're done. You are so done. You think you can intimidate me? I know who you people are. You think the rules don't apply to you. Who actually are you people, Patricia?" Marcus asked. "Thugs," she spat out. "Scammers. You think because you buy a fake ticket, you can walk in here and sit next to decent, hard-working people? Not on my watch." The young agent David was now frantically typing on his computer. Patty, wait. I just pulled up his passenger record. The ticket. It was bought with an American Express Centurion Black Card. It's a full-fare, unrestricted J-class." Patricia didn't hear him. Or if she did, she didn't care. She was too far gone in her rage. She saw the two uniformed Port Authority police officers jogging down the concourse toward them, hands resting on their belts. "There they are," Patricia gloated, crossing her arms. "Let's see how tough you are now." The arrival of the police shifted the atmosphere from tense to volatile. The officers, Officer Miller and Officer Hernandez, were veterans of JFK. They were used to drunk passengers and angry delays, but they could sense this was different. "What's the problem here?" Officer Miller asked, stepping between Marcus and the podium. He was a large man, imposing, with a weary expression. "He's refusing to leave the secure zone," Patricia shouted, playing the victim instantly. "He's harassing me, filming me without consent, and he tried to push past me onto the jetway. I want him removed and charged with trespassing." Officer Miller turned to Marcus. He saw a tall black man in a hoodie. He saw the phone in his hand. His hand drifted closer to his taser. "Sir, put the phone away and step back," Miller ordered. "I am recording for my own safety," Marcus said, not moving but keeping his hands visible and open. "I have not raised my voice. I have not threatened anyone. I simply asked to board the flight I paid for." "I told him his ticket is invalid," Patricia interjected. "He's a fraud." "Sir, let me see your ID and boarding pass," Officer Hernandez said, stepping in. She was more observant than her partner. She noticed the quality of Marcus's sneakers, limited edition, understated but expensive. She noticed his posture, not aggressive, but authoritative. Marcus handed her his passport and his phone with the QR code. Hernandez looked at the passport, United States of America. She flipped it open. She paused. It was thick. Extra pages added. Stamps from everywhere. Tokyo, Dubai, Zurich, Singapore, Davos. This wasn't the passport of a scammer. This was the passport of a diplomat or a tycoon. "Check the name," Marcus said softly to Hernandez. "Run it if you need to." "Officer, why are you talking to him?" Patricia snapped. "Just handcuff him. He's holding up the flight." "Ma'am, give us a second," Hernandez said sharply. She looked at the boarding pass on the screen. Seat 1A status, Global Elite. She looked back at the passport. Marcus Thorne. The name triggered a faint memory in Hernandez's mind. She watched the news. She read the Wall Street Journal. Thorne Dynamics. The tech giant that had just announced a massive partnership with the U.S. government for drone logistics. She looked up at Marcus, her eyes widening slightly. "Mr. Thorne?" she asked respectfully. "Yes," Marcus nodded. "Officer, my mother is in the hospital in London. This agent is blocking me based on my appearance. I am asking you to facilitate my boarding so I don't miss this flight." Hernandez turned to Patricia. "Ma'am, this ID is valid. The ticket looks real. You need to scan him in." Patricia's jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me? You're taking his side. He probably stole that ID. Look at him. He's a thug." "Ma'am, that is enough," Hernandez warned. "No, it is not enough," Patricia screamed. "The stress of the day? Her inherent bias and the humiliation of being challenged were boiling over. "I am the senior gate agent. I decide who gets on this plane. And I say, he is a security risk. If you let him on, I will file a report against you for endangering the safety of this flight. I want his bags searched. I want a full background check. He is not getting on this plane." She grabbed the microphone for the gate PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are pausing boarding due to a security threat in the priority lane. Please remain calm." The crowd groaned. Phones were out everywhere now. 50 people were live streaming the meltdown. Marcus looked at his watch. It was 8:45 p.m. The flight departed at 9:15 p.m. He looked at Patricia. He realized she would never let him on. Even if the police forced her, she would claim he made a bomb threat or was drunk. She would delay the flight for hours just to spite him. He couldn't wait. He had to get to London. "Okay," Marcus said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "Okay." He took his passport back from Officer Hernandez. "I am leaving the gate," Marcus announced. "See!" Patricia yelled triumphantly. "Run away, coward!" Marcus turned to Officer Miller. "I am not running. But I cannot deal with this right now. Officer, do I have your badge number?" Yeah. 4,922, Miller said, confused. Marcus nodded. He looked at Patricia one last time. "You have no idea what you have just done. I truly hope it was worth it." He turned and walked away from the gate. He didn't head toward the exit. He headed toward the private VIP lounge corridor, where the quiet, soundproof boardrooms were located. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. It wasn't his assistant this time. It was a number stored simply as Raymond, Chairman GZA. Raymond Gathers was the chairman of the board for Global Zenith Airlines. He was also a man who was currently begging Marcus Thorne to sign a $40 billion contract to upgrade the airline's aging cloud infrastructure and integrate Thorne's new AI piloting assistance software. Marcus walked into the empty corridor, the sound of Patricia's yelling fading behind him. The phone rang twice. "Marcus," Raymond's jovial voice boomed. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you until the signing ceremony on Friday. Don't tell me you're having cold feet about the deal?" Marcus stopped walking. He looked out the window at the Global Zenith plane sitting on the tarmac. "Raymond," Marcus said, his voice ice cold, "we don't have a deal anymore." Raymond Gathers, chairman of Global Zenith Airlines, GZA, was currently holding a crystal flute of vintage champagne in a ballroom at the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan. He was surrounded by investors, basking in the glow of the upcoming merger announcement. The deal with Thorne Dynamics was the crown jewel of his career. It would modernize their entire fleet, automate their logistics, and save the airline approximately $2 billion a year in operational costs. When his phone buzzed with Marcus's personal number, Raymond smiled, excusing himself from a conversation with a hedge fund manager. He assumed Marcus was calling to confirm the dinner plans for Friday. "Marcus," Raymond said, stepping into a quieter way, "please tell me you're not calling to ask for more equity in the joint venture. My board is already stretching." "There is no joint venture, Raymond." Marcus's voice came through the speaker, crisp and unyieldingly cold. Raymond paused, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "I'm sorry. The connection is a bit fuzzy. It sounded like you said, 'I am standing in the corridor of Terminal 4 at JFK, 20 feet away from your Gate 42. Marcus interrupted. "I attempted to board Flight 882 to London to see my dying mother. I have a full fare ticket. I am a Global Elite member. And yet, your senior lead agent, a woman named Patricia, has denied me boarding." "What?" Raymond's face went pale. "Denied boarding? Why? Was the flight overbooked? We can bump someone. I can call." "She didn't bump me for capacity, Raymond. She blocked me because I am wearing a hoodie and sneakers. She told me I fit the profile of a criminal. She humiliated me in front of 50 passengers. called the police on me, and refused to scan my ticket because she believed a black man couldn't possibly afford a first-class seat. Raymond felt the blood drain from his legs. He leaned against the wall for support. Marcus, listen to me. This is a mistake. A terrible, low-level employee mistake. I will call the station manager right now. I will have her fired. I will get you on that plane personally. Just, please, don't let this affect the deal. The deal is dead, Marcus said. I do not do business with companies that cultivate this kind of culture. If your frontline staff feels comfortable racial profiling your biggest business partner, I can't trust you with my technology. I am terminating the letter of intent immediately. Marcus, please, you can't be serious. Raymond's voice rose to a desperate shout, attracting stares from the hotel staff. That deal is priced into our stock. We announce it on Friday. If you pull out, the market will slaughter us. I know, Marcus said, but I'm not waiting until Friday. What do you mean? I just sent a tweet, Raymond. It contains a video of your agent screaming at me and refusing to look at my valid ticket. It also contains a press release from Thorne Dynamics stating that due to irreconcilable ethical differences and discriminatory practices, we are severing all ties with Global Zenith. Marcus, don't. I've also instructed my brokerage to short your stock. I'm betting against you, Raymond. Because in about 10 minutes, when that video hits the algorithm, Global Zenith is going to nosedive. Marcus, wait! Let me fix this! Put Patricia on the phone! It's too late. I'm walking to the British Airways terminal. They have a flight in 40 minutes. Goodbye, Raymond. The line went dead. Raymond stared at his phone. A notification popped up. From Twitter, @MarcusThorne. Wealth does not insulate you from prejudice. Tonight at Global Zenith denied me flight 882 because I look suspicious. If they treat me this way, imagine how they treat you. Thorne Dynamics is officially terminating our $40 billion partnership. #BoycottGoodJays. Attached was the video. In just 30 seconds, it already had 10,000 views. Raymond dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, much like his career was about to. Blank. Back at gate 42, Patricia felt a surge of adrenaline-fueled righteousness. She had won. The thug was gone. The police had retreated, looking strangely annoyed with her, but she ignored that, and she had protected her flight. Okay, people, she clapped her hands, addressing the stunned crowd. Show's over. Boarding continues. Zone 1, step forward. She scanned the next passenger, a bewildered elderly woman who looked terrified to look Patricia in the eye. Patricia smiled tightly. Have a pleasant flight. She turned to David, the young agent who was staring at his computer screen with his mouth open. Close your mouth, David. You'll catch flies. We have a schedule to keep. Patty, David whispered, his voice trembling. Look at the news. I don't have time for the news, she snapped. Patty, look! David turned the monitor toward her. It was a live feed of CNBC. The banner at the bottom was flashing red. Breaking news. Thorne Dynamics dumps Global Zenith. The anchor was speaking rapidly. We are seeing a massive sell-off of Global Zenith, ZNTH, in after-hours trading. The stock has plummeted 12% in the last 5 minutes, following a tweet from tech mogul Marcus Thorne. Thorne alleges he was racially profiled and denied boarding at JFK moments ago. Patricia blinked. Thorne? Who is Thorne? David looked at her like she was radioactive. The guy you just kicked out, that was Marcus Thorne, the CEO, the guy who was supposed to sign the mega contract with us this week. Don't be stupid, Patricia scoffed, though a cold knot of dread began to form in her stomach. That guy in the hoodie? He was a nobody. He's worth $30 billion, Patty, David hissed. And you just called him a drug mule on camera. Patricia grabbed the mouse and scrolled through the Twitter feed David had open. The video, her video, was everywhere. She watched herself on the screen, face twisted in anger, pointing her finger, screaming, You fit the profile! The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. Fire this woman immediately. I'm canceling my GZA tickets right now. Imagine being so racist you cost your company $40 billion. Short GZA! To the ground! Suddenly, the printer behind the desk started whirring violently. It was printing out a passenger manifest update. Then the gate phone rang. Then David's walkie-talkie beeped. Then the landline rang again. It was a cacophony of alarms. Patricia reached for the phone, her hand shaking uncontrollably. Gate 42, Patricia speaking. This is Operations Control, a voice barked. It wasn't the usual dispatcher. It was the director of JFK operations. Stop the boarding. Do not close that aircraft door. But we are at 98% boarded, Patricia stammered. We need to push back to make the slot. I said stop. The director screamed so loud that David could hear it 3 feet away. Ground the plane. Nobody leaves. Port Authority is on their way back to you, and I am coming down there personally with the regional VP. Am I in trouble? Patricia asked, her voice small. Trouble? The director laughed, a dark, hysterical sound. Patricia, the stock is down 18%. The board of directors has convened an emergency meeting. You didn't just cause a PR incident. You just triggered a market crash. Stay right where you are. Patricia hung up the phone. She looked out at the line of economy passengers still waiting to board. They were all looking at their phones. They were all looking at her. A teenager in the front of the line held up his phone. Hey, you're famous? He shouted. You're trending #1 worldwide, Karen of the sky! Patricia took a step back, her heel catching on the rubber mat. She stumbled, clutching the podium for support. The power she had felt 10 minutes ago, the thrill of judging and rejecting, had evaporated. In its place was a terrifying, hollow void. She looked at the first-class sign she had guarded so zealously, it mocked her now. 20 minutes later, the atmosphere at Gate 42 was funereal. The boarding had been halted. The passengers already on the plane were confused and restless, but the captain had come over the intercom to tell them there was a, quote, personnel issue that required immediate attention. Patricia stood behind the podium, isolated. David had moved to the far end of the desk, physically distancing himself from her as if she had a contagious disease. Then, the procession arrived. It wasn't just the operations manager. It was a phalanx of suits. At the front was Raymond Gathers himself. He had taken a helicopter from the Pierre Hotel to JFK in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, or at least to perform the sacrifice the public demanded. He looked disheveled. His tie was crooked, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and panic. Flanking him were 2 corporate lawyers and the chief of airport police. The crowd of passengers parted like the Red Sea as Raymond stormed toward the gate. The murmurs stopped. Everyone knew who this was. Patricia straightened up, trying to salvage some dignity. Mr. Gathers, I can explain. The passenger was non-compliant. He refused to... Shut up, Raymond said. He didn't shout. He spoke with a quiet, trembling intensity that was far scarier. He walked right up to the podium, invading her personal space, staring down at her. Do you know what you did? Raymond whispered. I followed protocol. Patricia insisted, though her voice wavered. He looked suspicious. He had no bags. He was wearing clothes, Raymond roared, slamming his hand on the desk, making everyone jump. He is Marcus Thorne. He is the single most important contract holder in this airline's history. And because you didn't like his sneakers or the color of his skin, you decided to play God. I didn't know, Patricia cried, tears finally spilling over. He didn't look like a CEO. And what does a CEO look like, Patricia? Raymond asked, his voice dripping with venom. Do they look like me? Do they look white? Is that it? Patricia stammered, trapped. No, I was protecting the flight. You destroyed the flight, Raymond said. He pulled out his iPad and shoved it in her face. The screen showed a stock chart. It was a vertical red line dropping off a cliff. See that? That is $4 billion of market cap gone in 40 minutes. That is people's pensions. That is our fuel budget for next year. Gone. Because of you. He turned to the chief of police. I want her removed from this terminal immediately. I want her badge confiscated. She is trespassing on Global Zenith property. Patricia gasped. You can't do that. I have 20 years of seniority. I have a union. One of the corporate lawyers stepped forward. We have reviewed the footage, Ms. Danner. You violated Article 14 of your contract. Gross misconduct and discriminatory behavior causing reputational damage. We are terminating your employment for cause, effective immediately. Your pension is frozen pending the civil litigation we intend to file against you for damages. Civil litigation? Patricia shrieked. You're suing me? We are going to sue you for every penny you have and every penny you will ever make, Raymond promised. Now, get her out of my sight. Officer Miller, the same officer Patricia had tried to weaponize against Marcus, stepped forward. He wasn't smiling, but there was a distinct lack of sympathy in his eyes. Ma'am, please hand over your ID badge and airport security credentials. No, Patricia grabbed the podium. This is my gate. I didn't do anything wrong. He was the one filming me. Ma'am, don't make me cuff you in front of the passengers, Miller said heavily. Trembling, sobbing, Patricia unclipped her badge. She laid it on the counter. It felt like she was laying down her identity. For 20 years, she had been the queen of Gate 42. Now, she was nothing. Escort her out, Raymond ordered, turning his back on her. As Officer Miller led Patricia away, the terminal was silent. But then, one person started clapping. Then, another. It was the passengers in the economy line, the people she had barked at, herded, and treated like cattle for years. The applause grew. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was a slow, rhythmic clap of justice. Patricia kept her head down, tears streaming down her face as she was marched past the velvet ropes she had used to separate the worthy from the unworthy. She was walked right past the first-class lane, through the economy thoroughfare, and out the exit doors. But the story wasn't over. As Raymond watched her leave, his phone rang again. It was the board of directors. Raymond, the lead director said, his voice coming through the speakerphone clearly enough for the lawyers to hear, we saw the video. And we saw your interview from last year where you defended aggressive gatekeeping policies. The internet is digging up everything. I just fired her, Raymond pleaded. I handled it. It's not enough, the director said. The stock is still falling. The investors want blood at the top. We're voting on a motion of no confidence, Raymond. We need you to tender your resignation by morning. Raymond lowered the phone. He looked at the empty jetway where Marcus Thorne should have been boarding. The karma hadn't just come for the gate agent. It had come for the whole kingdom. Marcus Thorne didn't watch the news that night. He didn't check the stock ticker. He sat in seat 1K on British Airways Flight 112, staring out the window at the Atlantic Ocean below, sipping water and praying. He landed at Heathrow at 7 a.m. A car was waiting. By 8:30 a.m., he was walking into the ICU of St. Thomas Hospital. His mother, Eleanor, was small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, but her eyes were open. When she saw him, she smiled weakly. You look tired, baby, she whispered, her voice rasping. Marcus exhaled, a breath he felt he had been holding for 12 hours. He sat down and took her hand. I had a bit of a rough trip at the airport, Mom, but I'm here. She squeezed his hand. She was going to be okay. The surgery was scheduled, but the doctors were optimistic. While Marcus sat in that quiet hospital room, the world outside was burning. The clip of Patricia screaming, "You fit the profile!" had been viewed 40 million times. It had become the symbol of corporate arrogance. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a movement. People began sharing their own stories of mistreatment by Global Zenith. The hashtag #GroundJesus was the #1 trend in 10 countries. By the time the markets closed the next day, Global Zenith stock had lost 32% of its value. It was the largest single-day drop in airline history. The company was bleeding cash. Corporate clients were canceling contracts. The brand was toxic. Raymond Gathers resigned in disgrace 48 hours after the incident. He walked out of the building shielding his face from paparazzi, his golden parachute slashed to ribbons by the board. And Patricia? Patricia sat in her small apartment in Queens, the blinds drawn. She couldn't turn on the TV. She couldn't look at her phone. Her inbox was full of death threats. Her face was on the cover of the New York Post under the headline, "The 40 billion dollar bully." She had received a letter that morning, not from the airline, but from a law firm representing Global Zenith shareholders. They were suing her personally for negligence and reputational destruction. She would lose her house, she would lose her savings, she would lose everything. She poured herself a glass of cheap wine, her hands shaking. She thought about the man in the hoodie. She thought about how she had mocked him for looking poor. Now he was still a billionaire, and she was about to be destitute. The morning after the incident at Gate 42, the headquarters of Global Zenith Airlines in Dallas looked less like a corporate office and more like a field hospital during a plague. The air conditioning was humming, but everyone was sweating. Phones were ringing with a relentless, shrill urgency that drilled into the skulls of the executives huddled in the boardroom. On the massive mahogany table, a single iPad displayed the bloodbath. The stock ticker symbol ZNTH was flashing red, arrow pointing down, down, down. It wasn't just a dip, it was a crater. The airline had lost $12 billion in market capitalization in the first 4 hours of trading. By lunch, it was $25 billion. Raymond Gathers sat at the head of the table, his tie loosened, staring at a glass of water he hadn't touched in hours. He looked 10 years older than he had the night before. Across from him sat the crisis management team, a group of the most expensive lawyers and PR fixers in America, and they all looked defeated. "The statement you released isn't working," the lead PR crisis manager said, sliding a report across the table. "We tried the isolated incident narrative. The public isn't buying it. The hashtag ground GZia is now trending in languages we don't even fly to. We have cancellations rolling in from Japan, Germany, Brazil. Corporate accounts are pulling out. IBM just suspended their contract. Amazon Logistics just paused their freight talks." Raymond rubbed his temples. "It was one gate agent," he whispered, his voice cracking. "One rogue employee. How can she destroy a 50-year-old legacy in 20 minutes? "Because she attacked Marcus Thorne," the general counsel replied sharply. "And Thorne didn't just tweet. He shorted us. He signaled to the entire market that we are incompetent. The algorithm followed him. We are in a death spiral, Raymond. The banks are calling in the credit lines. We don't have enough liquidity to survive the week." The door to the boardroom opened, and the chairman of the board walked in. He didn't sit down. He stood at the end of the table, flanked by 2 security guards. "Raymond," the chairman said, his voice devoid of emotion, "the board has voted. Unanimously." Raymond looked up, his eyes hollow. "I can fix this. Give me a month." "You don't have an hour," the chairman said. "You cultivated the culture that allowed this to happen. You went on television and bragged about elite exclusivity. You made Patricia possible. You are relieved of your duties effective immediately. Security will escort you to your car. Do not return to your office." Raymond stood up slowly. The silence in the room was deafening. He had built this company into a giant, and now he was being walked out like a petty thief. As he left the room, he heard the buzz of the lawyers already discussing his replacement. He realized then that the karma Marcus Thorne had unleashed wasn't a wave, it was a tsunami, and it was drowning them all. The long fall of Patricia Danner. While the executives were losing their golden parachutes, Patricia Danner was losing her life. 2 weeks after the incident, Patricia sat in the small living room of her Queens townhouse. The curtains were drawn tight to block out the news vans that had been parked on her street for days. The floor was littered with unopened mail, mostly envelopes with red stamps. Urgent, final notice, legal action. She hadn't showered in 3 days. She wore the same bathrobe she had been wearing when she was fired. On the coffee table sat her termination letter from Global Zenith. Beside it was a much thicker document, The lawsuit. Global Zenith Airlines versus Patricia Danner. Civil suit for damages, $10 million. They were blaming her for the stock crash. They were scapegoating her to save themselves. Her phone rang. It was her lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, because no private firm would touch her toxic case. Patricia? The lawyer's voice was tired. Did you talk to them? Patricia asked, clutching the phone. Did you tell them I was just following the training manual? I tried, the lawyer said. But they have the footage, Patricia. The manual says to screen for security threats, not to racially profile first-class passengers based on their shoes. The judge isn't sympathetic. Global Zenith is freezing your assets pending the trial. Freezing my assets? Patricia screamed, standing up. I have $2,000 in my checking account. That's it. How am I supposed to pay my mortgage? I don't know, the lawyer said, but the bank has already filed a motion. You're 3 months behind, and with the asset freeze. Patricia, you're going to lose the house. You need to start making other arrangements. The line went dead. Patricia dropped the phone. She looked around the room, at the photos of her vacations, the porcelain figurines she collected, the life she had built over 20 years of gatekeeping. It was all dissolving. A week later, the eviction notice came. A month later, she was sleeping on her sister's couch. But even that didn't last. Her sister's husband didn't want that racist woman from the news in his house. He said it was bad for his business. So Patricia was asked to leave. She tried to find work. She applied to Delta, American, United. The moment they saw her ID, the interviews ended. She applied to retail stores. She applied to call centers. Aren't you that lady from the airport video? A manager at a Target asked her during an interview, looking at her with disgust. Yeah, we're not hiring. She was radioactive. Marcus Thorne's video had made her the most recognizable villain in America. She had wanted to be important. She had wanted to be the authority figure who decided who was worthy. Now the world had decided she was worth nothing. 6 months passed. Her savings were gone. Her car was repossessed. She was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Jamaica, Queens, paying by the week with the last of her pawn jewelry money. She had one option left. A temp agency called her with a job that required no background check, no customer interaction, and no name tag. It's a cleaning contract, the temp agent said. Graveyard shift and early mornings. Minimum wage. Take it or leave it. Where is it? Patricia asked, her spirit broken. JFK, the agent said. Terminal 4. Patricia closed her eyes. It was a cruel, cosmic joke. To return to the kingdom she once ruled, not as a queen, but as a servant. I'll take it, she whispered. The hostile takeover. While Patricia was scrubbing floors, Marcus Thorne was in a glass-walled conference room in London, overlooking the Thames. He looked different, rested, sharper. His mother had recovered fully from her surgery, and the scare had given him a renewed sense of focus. He sat at the head of a table, surrounded by his team from Thorne Dynamics. On the wall was a projection of the Global Zenith stock chart. It had flatlined at $4.50 a share. It was a penny stock compared to its glory days. The airline was on the brink of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're bleeding out, Marcus, his CFO said. They're selling off planes to pay for fuel. The brand is dead. Why do we want this carcass? Marcus spun a pen between his fingers. He looked at the map of Global Zenith's routes, slots at Heathrow, Tokyo, Dubai, New York. Infrastructure that had taken 50 years to build. The brand is dead, Marcus agreed, but the bones are good. And the world needs to see that we don't just destroy things that are broken. We fix them. He stood up and walked to his window. I don't want a partnership anymore. And I don't want an apology. He turned back to the room. Initiate the buy order. Trigger the hostile takeover. We're buying 51% of the outstanding shares. That will cost us $3 billion, the CFO warned. Do it, Marcus said. And once the papers are signed, I want a complete rebranding. New name, new logo, and most importantly, new management. Fire the entire C-suite. We are going to build an airline where no one is ever judged by the color of their skin or the price of their clothes. The return of the king, the renovation of JFK Terminal 4 happened with military speed. Over a single weekend, the faded blue and gold of Global Zenith disappeared. The signage was replaced with sleek matte charcoal and silver. Zenith Air. Powered by Thorne Dynamics. The atmosphere in the terminal changed instantly. The oppressive, frantic energy of the old airline was gone. The new check-in counters were open plan. The staff wore modern, comfortable uniforms. They were trained not just in security, but in hospitality and unconscious bias. On the day of the official relaunch, the terminal was buzzing. Press from all over the world had gathered. They wanted to see the man who had destroyed an airline with a tweet, only to buy it with his pocket change. Marcus walked through the automatic doors of the departure level. He wasn't in a hoodie this time. He wore a custom-tailored navy suit that fit his broad frame perfectly. But on his feet, he wore a pair of bright white, limited-edition sneakers. It was a subtle nod, a symbol that he was still the same man. He was flanked by his new security team and Sarah, who was now the chief operating officer of the airline. "Gate 42 is ready for the ribbon cutting," Sarah said, checking her tablet. "How are the load factors?" Marcus asked. "Flight 882 to London is sold out," Sarah smiled. "And we have a waiting list. People want to fly with us, Marcus. They believe in the message." Marcus nodded. He walked past the long lines of passengers. They didn't look stressed. They looked excited. Some of them recognized him and waved. He waved back. He approached the first-class security lane, the exact spot where Officer Hernandez had checked his passport, the exact spot where Patricia had threatened him. It looked different now. The barriers were glass, not rope. The agents were smiling. Marcus stopped and looked at the podium. He remembered the humiliation. He remembered the rage. But strangely, he didn't feel angry anymore. He felt a profound sense of responsibility. He had proven that the system could be changed, but only if you had the courage to break it first. "Mr. Thorne?" A young gate agent, a woman of color with natural hair, stood at the podium. She was beaming. "We're ready. For you, sir. And thank you for everything." Marcus smiled warmly. "You're doing a great job. Keep it up." He turned to head toward the VIP lounge for the press conference. As he walked through the main concourse, the crowd parted for him. He was the king of this castle now. But as he passed the entrance to the food court, he saw a commotion. A wet floor sign had been knocked over. A bucket of soapy water had spilled across the gleaming terrazzo tiles. A cleaner was on her hands and knees, frantically trying to sop up the mess with gray, ragged towels. She was wearing a shapeless, oversized gray jumpsuit that swallowed her figure. A faded blue cap was pulled low over her eyes, hiding her face. People were walking around her, some stepping dangerously close to her fingers, ignoring her completely. To them, she was invisible, just a piece of airport furniture. Marcus slowed down. Something about the frantic, terrified scrubbing was familiar. The desperation in the body language. He stopped 10 feet away. The cleaner looked up, sensing the presence of someone standing still in the river of moving people. She froze. Her face was gaunt, aged by stress and poverty. Her blonde hair, once sprayed into a rigid helmet of authority, was limp and graying, tucked messily under the cheap cap. Her hands, once perfectly manicured as they pointed accusing fingers, were red, chapped, and wrinkled from harsh chemicals. It was Patricia. The moment stretched into an eternity. The sounds of the terminal faded away. Patricia stared at Marcus, her eyes filled with a cocktail of emotions: terror, shame, recognition, and a pitiful plea for mercy. She stopped breathing. She knew who he was. She knew he owned this building, this airline, this floor she was scrubbing. She waited for the axe to fall. She waited for him to point at her and yell, "Security, remove this woman." She waited for him to take out his phone and film her, to finish the job of destroying her life. She braced herself for the mockery. "Look at you now, Patricia. Look who fits the profile now." Marcus looked at her. He saw the name tag pinned crookedly to her jumpsuit. Patty, cleaning staff. He looked at her sneakers, cheap, worn-out knockoffs that were falling apart. He remembered the way she had looked at him 6 months ago, the sneer, the absolute certainty of her own superiority. And he saw what she was now. A woman who had lost everything because of her own hatred. The universe had balanced the scales with a precision that was almost frightening. Marcus didn't take out his phone. He didn't laugh. He didn't call security. He felt a sudden, heavy sadness. There was no victory in kicking someone who was already on the ground. Her punishment wasn't something he needed to inflict. She was living it, every single minute of every single day. He took a step toward her. Patricia flinched, pulling back as if he were going to strike her. Marcus stopped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp, white handkerchief. He crouched down, ruining the crease of his $5,000 suit trousers, and placed the handkerchief on the floor next to her trembling hand. "You missed a spot," Marcus said softly. It wasn't a taunt. It was a simple, human observation. He stood up, looking down at her one last time. "Work hard, Patricia," he said, his voice void of malice but heavy with authority. "Everyone deserves a second chance to be decent. Don't waste yours." He turned and walked away. Patricia remained on her knees, staring at the white handkerchief on the dirty floor. Tears welled up in her eyes and spilled over, dripping onto the tiles. She watched his back as he walked away, surrounded by his executives, moving toward the light of the runway. He hadn't fired her. He hadn't screamed. He had treated her with more dignity in 10 seconds than she had treated him in the entirety of their first meeting. And that, she realized as she picked up the rag to keep scrubbing, was the ultimate defeat. Marcus Thorne didn't care about her anymore. She was just a speck of dust in the empire he had built. He boarded his plane. The engines roared to life, and the new Zenith Air took flight, soaring high above the clouds, leaving the hate and the dirt far, far behind. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how Marcus Thorne turned a moment of disrespect into an empire. It's a brutal, beautiful reminder of how quickly the tables can turn. Patricia spent her life looking down on people, only to end up on her knees looking up at the very man she tried to shame. It makes you think, doesn't it? Every person you meet, whether they're in a hoodie or a suit, serving coffee or flying the plane, is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Treat them with respect, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of justice, business intrigue, and karma, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that these stories matter. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to hear our next saga. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Marcus was too easy on her in the end? Should he have fired her from the cleaning job too? Or was seeing her scrub the floor punishment enough? Let's talk about it down below. Thanks for watching, stay humble, and I'll see you in the next one.